He wanted to be the Trump whisperer, but now the president has humiliated the Prime Minister, calling Keir Starmer's policies stupid.
Having given away the Chagos Islands and now green-lighted the Chinese super spying embassy in London, doesn't the Donald have a point?
Starmer's sense of a rules-based order is based not upon values or philosophy, but the rules themselves.
Yes, regardless of whether they're good or not.
Are you just obeying the rule?
Because they're there.
So the rule for the Chagosians is totally different from the rule for the people of Greenland or the Falklands.
Yes.
But the point for him is simply that the rules are being followed.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the problem here. He's not.
Yes.
He doesn't know how to defend something because he doesn't believe in anything.
No, he's the kid who obeyed the no ball game sign.
Yes.
Against all law.
Good day, political aficionados and connoisseurs of the utterly chaotic. Welcome back to the British Report, where we dissect the headlines with the precision of a surgeon and the glee of a child let loose in a sweet shop. Now prepare yourselves, because today we are diving headfirst into a story so spicy, so undeniably British in its outrage, that it involves the only man who can make the entire Labour front bench look like they have accidentally swallowed a lemon. We are talking about the ultimate political crossover event, the Davos World Economic Forum 2026. Picture the scene: the air is thin, the coffee is £20 a cup, and the tension between number 10 and Mar-a-Lago has reached a sub-zero freeze. But in the middle of it all, Donald Trump just delivered a masterclass in diplomatic trolling, and he did it with a 6-word message that has left Keir Starmer's foreign policy looking like a damp squib in a hurricane. Yes, we are talking about the moment Trump looked past the official British delegation and said, "Thank you, Tony, for being here." Quick favour, if you are loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It is free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. Right then, let us set the scene. Imagine, if you will, the pristine snow-capped peaks of Davos. Usually, it is a place where billionaires and bureaucrats gather to discuss how to save the planet while eating Wagyu beef. But this year, the atmosphere was a little different. It felt less like a global summit and more like the first day of a new school where the popular American kid has just started a rival club and the British head boy has decided to stay home in a huff. Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, who, let us be honest, treats international diplomacy like a reality television finale, has just launched his Board of Peace, and while Keir Starmer and his Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, were busy drafting sternly worded emails about why they were boycotting the whole thing, a familiar face popped up in the front row, a face that has probably been on more television screens than the BBC logo itself, Sir Tony Blair. The optics, quite frankly, were devastating. You have the current British government standing on principle, arms crossed, refusing to play with the new toy in the sandbox, while the ghost of New Labour past is sitting there grinning like a Cheshire cat who has just been given the keys to the cream factory. When Trump stood on that stage and uttered those 6 words, "Thank you, Tony, for being here," he was not just being polite. This is Donald Trump we are talking about. He does not do polite unless there is a strategic point to be made. Those 6 words were a heat-seeking missile aimed directly at the heart of Keir Starmer's authority. It was a public humiliation delivered with a smirk, essentially telling the world, the current lot in London are irrelevant. I will just deal with the guy who actually knows how to play the game. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth is this Board of Peace, and why is the British government treating it like it is a radioactive potato? Well, sit back, because the plot thickens faster than a bowl of cold porridge.
I wouldn't go that far. Obviously, I disagreed with President Trump in relation to his approach to Greenland. I disagreed with him on the question of threats of tariffs.
You did.
I agree with him on the need for greater security in the Arctic.
The Board of Peace was originally sold as a mechanism to govern Gaza following the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. A noble goal, surely. A transitional governing administration to help rebuild a shattered territory. But because this is a Trump production, the scope expanded faster than his Twitter feed on a Tuesday night. It is now being framed as a consequential body, with a wide-ranging role promoting peace across the entire globe. Some critics, and by critics we mean almost everyone at the United Nations, have described it as Trump's attempt to create a Diet UN, an alternative to the United Nations where the US president sits as the permanent chairman, and decisions are made with the speed of a boardroom meeting rather than the glacial pace of a General Assembly. The UK, however, is having none of it. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has been doing the rounds looking remarkably like a schoolteacher who has found a student trying to sell fake hall passes. She confirmed that while the UK was invited to be a founding member, the answer was a resounding no. The reason? Concerns about the company being kept, specifically the shadow of Vladimir Putin. The UK is refusing to take part because, in their view, you cannot have a board of peace that includes a man currently waging a war in Ukraine. It is a bit like forming a fire safety committee and inviting the local arsonist because he knows a lot about matches. Cooper was blunt. We won't be one of the signatories today. We have still not seen any signs from Putin that there will be a commitment to peace in Ukraine. But here is where the suspense builds. While the UK is clutching its pearls, around 35 other countries have already signed up. This is not just a fringe group of renegade nations. We are talking about regional powers and significant players like Argentina's Javier Milei and Hungary's Viktor Orban. It is becoming a club of strongmen and disruptors, and Tony Blair decided that he wanted a seat at the table, not as a representative of the UK government, heaven forbid, but as a member of the executive board. It is the ultimate complicated relationship status. Blair is essentially acting as a bridge between the old world order and the new chaotic Trumpian reality, and in doing so, he has made Starmer look like the guest who stayed at home to wash their hair while the party of the century was happening next door. So why does this matter? Why is a 6-word thank you from an American president such a slap in the face for a British Prime Minister who has a majority that can be seen from space? It matters because of the power of the shadow government. In British politics, there is nothing quite as awkward as a former Prime Minister who refuses to go quietly into the night. Tony Blair is the ultimate backseat driver of the Labour Party. For Keir Starmer, who has spent years trying to convince the public that he is a serious, steady and principled leader, having his predecessor fly off to Davos to cosy up to the man Starmer is trying to ignore is a nightmare. It undermines the idea of a united British front on the world stage. It makes the UK look divided, indecisive and, worst of all, weak. Relate it to this. Imagine you have a big family disagreement about whether to go to a particular restaurant. You say, absolutely not, the chef is a nightmare and the hygiene rating is a 0. You make a big show of staying home and eating a sensible salad. Then, halfway through your lettuce, you see your dad on the evening news, sitting at the chef's table in that very restaurant, sharing a laugh and a bottle of expensive red. That is Tony Blair. He has essentially told the world that the British government's boycott is a them problem, not a Britain problem.
13 U-turns and counting. Perhaps we should begin to feel sorry for Sir Keir Starmer because everything he touches turns to ashes and wormwood. He has the reverse Midas touch, that he doesn't seem to be able to get anything right. Take the recent events with Donald Trump. First of all, Greenland. Greenland shows that the much trumpeted special relationship that Starmer had with Trump doesn't really seem to exist. He doesn't have an ability to protect the United Kingdom from an irrational policy decision of Trump that doesn't seem to take any account of any of his allies. But Chagos surely is an even greater embarrassment for Starmer because Trump is right.
And Donald Trump knows exactly what he is doing. By singling out Blair for praise, he is effectively saying that the real Britain, the Britain that matters, the Britain that gets things done, is the one represented by Sir Tony. It is a classic Trump move, divide and conquer. He is rewarding the person who showed up and punishing the people who stayed away by making them invisible. In the high-stakes theatre of Davos, visibility is everything. If you are not in the room, you do not exist. And by staying out of the room, Starmer and Cooper have left a vacuum that Blair was only too happy to fill with his own brand of global statesman energy. But let us look at the Board of Peace itself for a moment. Is it a genuine attempt at diplomacy, or is it just Mar-a-Lago with a more prestigious stationery? The structure of this thing is pure Trump. It is a pay-to-join model of international relations. If you want to be a permanent member, the rumour is you have to stump up a cool $1 billion. If not, you are on a 3-year rotation. It is less like the UN and more like a high-end golf club. Governance without vetoes, they call it. Which sounds great until you realise that the only person who doesn't have a veto is the chairman himself. It is a streamlined approach to diplomacy, designed to bypass the paralysis of traditional multilateral institutions. In simple terms, it is a get-stuff-done committee. But the stuff being done is entirely at the whim of the man at the top. For someone like Tony Blair, who has always had a bit of a messiah complex when it comes to Middle Eastern peace, The lure of being on the executive board of such a powerful, well-funded body was clearly too much to resist. He sees it as the best chance of ending years of misery. The UK government sees it as a legal treaty that raises much broader issues. It is a fundamental clash of philosophies. The pragmatic, transactional approach of the deal-maker versus the principled, rule-based approach of the lawyer. And while they argue, the world moves on. Vladimir Putin is consulting with strategic partners about joining. Think about that for a second. A peace board where Trump, Blair and potentially Putin are the architects of a new world order. It sounds like the plot of a political thriller that would be rejected for being too far-fetched. And yet, here we are in 2026, watching it unfold on the news. The suspense is not just about whether the board will work, it is about what it means for the existing international system. If the Board of Peace succeeds in even a fraction of its goals, it makes the UN look like a dusty museum piece. If it fails, it is a catastrophic waste of time and money that has only served to further divide the West.
Out of this with any credit, whilst in the Foreign Office, is actually David Cameron, who realised how stupid it was and stopped it for his relatively brief period as Foreign Secretary. But as soon as Labour got in, they wanted to give Chagos away and give billions of pounds to Mauritius for no good reason whatsoever. It's their obsession with their view, their mistaken view, of international law. Let's look at what the international law is supposed to be. It's a decision by a United Nations court that Chagos belongs to Mauritius. But the United Kingdom is not a signatory to that court for these sorts of matters.
The question that remains, of course, is what this does to the relationship between the UK and the US. Are we looking at a permanent frost, or is this just a temporary bit of theatre? Keir Starmer has a very delicate tightrope to walk. He needs the US. He needs a trade deal. He needs security cooperation. And he needs the prestige of the special relationship. But he cannot be seen to be a poodle to a president whose policies and personality are anathema to a large portion of the British public and his own party. By boycotting the Board of Peace, he was trying to show strength and principle. But by allowing Tony Blair to steal the limelight, he has ended up looking like he is not even in control of his own party's elder statesman. Trump's 6-word message was a reminder that in the world of power politics, personal relationships often trump, pun intended, official policy. Blair has spent decades cultivating a network of influence. He knows how to speak the language of the billionaire class and the political elite. Starmer, for all his competence, is still the new kid on the international stage. He is trying to play by the rules in a world where the person writing the rules has just thrown the rule book into the fireplace to keep the Davos suite warm. The humiliation is not just that Trump thanked Blair, it is that he didn't mention Starmer. He didn't acknowledge the UK's concerns. He didn't even give them the dignity of a rebuttal. He simply ignored them and focused on the person who gave him the validation he wanted. It is a masterclass in psychological warfare. It says, I don't need the British Prime Minister when I have a British Prime Minister who actually understands me. As we wrap up this whirlwind tour of the snowy peaks and political valleys of 2026, what have we learned? We have learned that Tony Blair is still the ultimate political survivor, able to navigate the most treacherous waters and come out smelling like a rose, or at least like a very expensive aftershave. We have learned that Donald Trump has lost none of his ability to disrupt the international order with a single sentence. And we have learned that the current British government has a massive problem on its hands, how to maintain its principles without becoming irrelevant in a world that is increasingly moving toward a transactional, leader-driven form of diplomacy. The Board of Peace might be a vanity project, as its critics claim, or it might be the most consequential body ever created, as Trump insists. But regardless of its success, the moment in Davos has exposed a rift in the British political soul. It has shown a country torn between its traditional alliances and a new, uncertain future where the old rules no longer apply. And as long as Keir Starmer is sitting in London while Tony Blair is sitting in Davos, the question of who really speaks for Britain will continue to haunt the halls of Westminster. The 6-word message was a wake-up call. Whether the British government chooses to hit the snooze button or actually deal with the new reality is the story we will be following in the months to come. One thing is for certain, with characters like Trump and Blair in the mix, it is never going to be boring. Thank you for watching.